Welcome back to the Deep Dive, where we explore the intersection of innovation, regulation, and strategy across the life sciences industry. I'm Anna, and with me, as always, is Eric.
Today, we're diving into a topic that sits right at the heart of global healthcare infrastructure: biomanufacturing resilience.
If the pandemic taught us anything, it's that innovation alone doesn't get medicines to patients. Supply chains do. And when those supply chains break, the ripple effects are massive. Manufacturing delays, material shortages, and shipping bottlenecks exposed how vulnerable even the most advanced biotech operations really were.
In this episode, we're unpacking what's changed since then and how the industry is building a smarter, more resilient future. Because resilience isn't just about recovery anymore, it's about readiness.
When COVID 19 hit, global demand for biologics and vaccines skyrocketed almost overnight. But the infrastructure couldn't keep up. Production capacity was uneven. Key materials like resins and filters were concentrated in a handful of suppliers, and border restrictions made logistics unpredictable. The result was a perfect storm. Scientific breakthroughs met operational bottlenecks.
What we saw was that decades of focusing on efficiency, just in time manufacturing, lean supply models, came at the cost of flexibility. It worked well in stable times, but under pressure, it left no room for error. Companies found themselves asking, how can we prevent this from happening again?
That question reshaped how the industry defines success. Biomanufacturing resilience is no longer a buzzword, it's become a strategic imperative.
So, what does that actually look like?
First, diversification. Companies are rethinking supplier dependencies. Instead of sourcing all critical materials from a single vendor or region, many are developing backup suppliers and building regional redundancies. For example, large manufacturers are now locking in long term contracts for single use components to protect against sudden shortages.
Second, digitization. Technologies like digital twins, AI driven forecasting, and blockchain tracking are helping companies visualize their entire supply chain in real time. They can identify potential bottlenecks before they happen and model the impact of different disruption scenarios.
And third, design flexibility. The shift toward modular biomanufacturing facilities allows organizations to scale production up or down faster, swap product lines more easily, and adapt to different therapeutic needs. Instead of massive fixed plants, we're seeing smaller, more adaptable facilities that can pivot when supply or demand changes.
Global policy is reinforcing this movement. The U.S. National Biotechnology and Biomanufacturing Initiative aims to expand domestic production capacity and reduce dependence on foreign suppliers. Europe is following suit, focusing on sustainable and regionally distributed manufacturing systems.
Meanwhile, countries like Singapore and South Korea are taking proactive steps to position themselves as biomanufacturing hubs. Singapore's Economic Development Board, for instance, has heavily invested in workforce training and advanced manufacturing infrastructure, while South Korea has expanded public private partnerships to strengthen its biologic supply chain.
The result? A global industry learning to be more agile, distributed, and collaborative.
What's emerging from all this is a new mindset, one that values resilience as much as innovation. Because the truth is, the next big disruption won't ask for permission. Whether it's a pandemic, geopolitical tension, or even a cyber attack, companies that build systems capable of adapting quickly will be the ones that thrive.
And as the industry evolves, the question becomes, how do we balance efficiency and resilience without driving costs through the roof? How do we build systems that are both secure and scalable?
Those are the questions we'll keep exploring throughout this conversation as we look at the lessons learned, the technologies driving change, and the strategies defining the next generation of biomanufacturing.
So let's get into it. What have we actually learned from the last few years? The pandemic was the big wake-up call, but disruptions didn't stop there. We've seen material shortages, trade tensions, even extreme weather events affecting logistics. It's made companies realize that global supply chains, while efficient, are also fragile.
Exactly. And one of the clearest lessons has been that redundancy is not waste, it's insurance. For decades, manufacturing strategies focused on minimizing costs, but now leaders are realizing that redundancy, having extra suppliers, facilities, or inventory, can be the difference between staying operational and shutting down for months.
Right. And what's really interesting is how much digital transformation is now shaping biomanufacturing resilience. Before 2020, digitalization was something companies talked about but often delayed because of cost or complexity. Now it's become non negotiable.
We're seeing it everywhere. Digital twins that model production environments in real time, predictive analytics that flag potential supply chain disruptions, and cloud based collaboration tools connecting sites across continents. Companies are using AI to monitor process stability, track raw material quality, and even simulate different production scenarios before they happen.
And this shift isn't just about technology, it's also about transparency. Regulators are demanding clearer visibility into supply chain risk. The FDA's draft guidance on manufacturing continuity, for example, encourages companies to build proactive risk management into their quality systems. That's a major step toward making resilience part of compliance, not just an operational goal.
The EMA is doing something similar. Their advanced manufacturing strategy highlights the need for data sharing and regional supply hubs to reduce dependence on single suppliers. We're watching regulators worldwide evolve from inspectors into partners in resilience.
Which makes sense, because everyone saw how a bottleneck in one country can cause shortages everywhere. Take the resin shortage in 2021, critical for single use bioreactors. A single manufacturing facility going offline in Texas caused weeks of production delays around the globe. That's when the industry started asking how we can localize production without losing efficiency.
That's led to this rise in regional manufacturing models, smaller modular biomanufacturing facilities closer to end markets. Instead of one mega plant supplying multiple continents, you might have four smaller ones producing regionally. It reduces shipping risk, improves agility, and even helps with sustainability goals by cutting emissions from logistics.
Speaking of sustainability, that's another big theme here. Resilience and sustainability are becoming intertwined. Companies are realizing that resource efficiency, like reusing water, cutting energy use, or optimizing raw materials, isn't just good for the planet, it's good for business continuity.
Absolutely. For instance, we're seeing more investment in single use technology recycling, which helps companies manage both supply risk and environmental footprint. And sustainability targets are now influencing supplier selection. If a vendor doesn't meet ESG standards, it could be considered a compliance risk.
That's a really important point because it shows how resilience is no longer siloed. It touches quality, sustainability, finance, and even HR. Workforce shortages, for example, became a major bottleneck during the pandemic, especially in specialized roles like bioprocessing.
Exactly. And to solve that, companies are creating cross trained teams. So when one part of the operation is hit, others can step in. It's all about flexibility. Some are even partnering with universities and trade programs to build the next generation of skilled workers.
So, if you put it all together, digitalization, diversification, sustainability, and workforce development, what we're seeing is a complete redesign of how the life sciences industry thinks about manufacturing.
And the best part? It's not just theory. We're seeing companies apply these lessons in real time. A few years ago, resilience was reactive, something you built after a disruption. Now it's proactive. It's part of design, part of culture, and part of compliance.
Up next, we'll look at some concrete examples of how biomanufacturers are putting these lessons into practice, what's working, what's not, and what it means for the next generation of therapies.
When you start looking at how companies are putting these lessons into action, one of the biggest shifts is toward modular and flexible biomanufacturing. Instead of massive single purpose facilities that take years to build, more organizations are moving to modular clean rooms and portable systems that can be scaled up or down based on demand.
These facilities are smaller, faster to deploy, and often designed with single use systems, which minimize cross contamination risk and reduce downtime between batches. During the pandemic, that kind of agility made a huge difference. Companies that had modular or hybrid setups were able to pivot faster to meet urgent vaccine or therapeutic production needs.
And now that model is becoming the new standard. What's exciting is that it's not just big pharma adopting this approach. Smaller biotech firms and CDMOs are using modular manufacturing to expand regionally, giving them more control over logistics and regulatory alignment.
Another fascinating trend is data-driven supply chain orchestration. Traditional supply chains used to rely on monthly or quarterly planning cycles. Now, digital ecosystems allow near real-time coordination. Sensors, cloud-based MES systems, and advanced ERP tools are giving leaders a complete view of raw material flow, capacity, and risk.
We're seeing examples of companies integrating predictive analytics into procurement. So, if one supplier's performance starts to slip, say longer lead times or lower yield quality, the system automatically flags alternatives before it becomes a crisis. That's a huge shift from reactive to proactive management.
And what's really transforming this entire landscape is cross-industry collaboration. For years, pharma manufacturing operated in silos, with proprietary processes and limited information sharing. But supply chain disruptions created a sense of urgency that's led to new partnerships.
Think of the Bioforum Consortium, where biopharma manufacturers collaborate to create shared standards for data exchange, process validation, and technology transfer. It's an acknowledgement that no single company can solve global resilience challenges alone. Uh,
That spirit of collaboration extends to governments, too. The U.S., for example, launched the National Biotechnology and Biomanufacturing Initiative aimed at strengthening domestic biomanufacturing capabilities. The EU followed suit with their Bioman 4R2 initiative, focusing on regional innovation hubs to reduce dependency on overseas supply chains.
What's particularly interesting is how these programs are beginning to overlap with economic and national security policies. We're not just talking about product safety anymore. We're talking about safeguarding public health infrastructure and industrial competitiveness.
Another key factor here is technology transfer. During the pandemic, it became painfully clear how hard it was to transfer complex biologics manufacturing processes from one site or one continent to another. Companies are now investing in standardized digital documentation and simulation tools to make tech transfer faster and more consistent.
This has huge implications for the future of global manufacturing networks. Imagine being able to replicate a validated process in a new facility halfway around the world within weeks, not months. That's where resilience meets scalability.
And, of course, all of this requires a strong regulatory backbone. Regulators are increasingly open to innovation, but they're also raising the bar for oversight. They want to see data integrity, cybersecurity, and supply continuity baked into every part of the manufacturing lifecycle.
For example, the FDA has been piloting advanced manufacturing programs that support companies using AI or continuous manufacturing methods. They're not just approving products, they're approving systems, an entirely new paradigm for regulation.
But that also means companies need to be strategic about documentation and validation. Every automation, every algorithm that affects production has to be explainable. That's where digital quality management systems come in, centralizing data and ensuring that compliance stays intact even as operations evolve.
It's interesting to think about how this all fits together. The future of biomanufacturing isn't just high tech, it's high trust. It's a balance between speed, flexibility, and accountability. The organizations that get that right are going to lead the next era of life sciences production.
And at the end of the day, this all circles back to one thing: patient access. Because behind every conversation about logistics, redundancy, or digital infrastructure, the goal remains the same: making sure therapies reach the people who need them without interruption.
You know, one of the best ways to understand how far the industry has come is to look at real world case studies. Take the example of companies that responded to the raw material shortages during the height of the pandemic. Some of them actually used it as a turning point to completely overhaul their sourcing models.
One biologics manufacturer we looked at implemented a dual sourcing strategy that covered not just suppliers but also geographies. Instead of relying on a single country for critical inputs like filters, resins, or cell media, they established partnerships in both North America and Europe. Within a year, they'd cut supply lead times by nearly 40% and avoided several major disruptions that hit their competitors.
That kind of proactive diversification has become a hallmark of resilient operations. And it's not limited to suppliers. Companies are also diversifying contract manufacturing partnerships. Instead of putting all their production in one CDMO, they're splitting programs across multiple partners to ensure redundancy and flexibility.
It's a trend we're seeing in cell and gene therapy, too. Those products are extremely sensitive to temperature, timing, and logistics. A delay of even a few hours can mean lost batches. So now, manufacturers are building decentralized networks of smaller, highly automated facilities closer to patients. It's the same logic as regional manufacturing: shorter supply chains, less risk.
Another good example is how digital tools are being used to increase transparency between suppliers and regulators. There's this new wave of blockchain based systems being tested for material traceability. Every component, from vials to cell lines, is logged in a secure, verifiable record. If something goes wrong, manufacturers can trace the issue back to the exact batch and supplier instantly. That kind of visibility didn't exist even 5 years ago.
Exactly. And that ties into another big change: real-time release testing. Traditionally, quality control has been a bottleneck in biologics manufacturing. Samples were taken, sent to a lab, and tested before the product could move forward. Now, with digital sensors and inline analytics, companies are starting to validate and release batches in real time.
That's huge. It doesn't just improve efficiency, it also strengthens resilience. If your process monitoring detects an anomaly early, you can fix it before an entire batch is compromised. It's predictive, not reactive.
Right. And that's the mindset shift we're seeing across the board. For decades, pharma manufacturing operated on the assumption that disruption was rare and manageable. Now, resilience is part of design. When new facilities are built, companies are thinking not just about output, but about continuity planning, data integrity, and supply adaptability from day one.
And to build that kind of infrastructure, collaboration with regulators has become crucial. The FDA's Emerging Technology Program has actually been a big enabler of this progress. It gives companies a platform to discuss novel manufacturing approaches like continuous manufacturing or AI based process control before formal submission. That proactive dialogue helps de risk innovation.
The EMA and Japan's PMDA have similar frameworks, and there's talk about greater global regulatory harmonization. If that happens, it could be transformative. Imagine a world where one digital validation framework could satisfy multiple health authorities. That would save enormous time and cost, especially for global supply networks.
That's such an important point because so much of resilience is about speed. The faster you can adapt, whether to a disruption, a regulatory change, or a market opportunity, the more resilient your system is.
And that brings us to the next generation of biomanufacturing technologies that are going to redefine what resilience looks like in the next decade.
We're talking AI driven process control, autonomous bioreactors, and fully digital supply chain twins, complete simulations that predict the impact of every variable, from temperature to transportation delays.
Exactly. A digital twin can simulate an entire facility's production performance and identify weak spots before they cause real issues. For example, if the model predicts that a supplier's delay will cause a downstream bottleneck, the system can automatically recommend alternative sourcing or schedule adjustments.
That's the future of resilience: intelligent self correcting systems that operate with minimal downtime. And companies that start investing in this now will have a huge competitive edge.
At the same time, there's a growing recognition that resilience doesn't just live in technology, it lives in people. You can automate systems, but you can't automate judgment. The organizations that thrive are the ones that cultivate teams who can think critically, pivot fast, and make informed decisions under pressure.
That's why workforce development remains a cornerstone of resilience. We're seeing partnerships between industry, academia, and government to train professionals in bioprocess automation, digital quality, and data driven operations. It's about future proofing the workforce as much as the infrastructure.
And that's what's so encouraging. The industry isn't just reacting anymore, it's evolving. It's learning from disruption, building smarter, and thinking holistically about what resilience really means.
Another angle that's shaping this conversation is global equity in biomanufacturing. During COVID 19, we saw how heavily production was concentrated in the US, Europe, and parts of Asia, and how difficult it was for developing regions to access vaccines and biologics quickly. That imbalance exposed not just supply chain weaknesses, but structural inequities.
Now, countries across Africa, the Middle East, and South America are investing in local biomanufacturing ecosystems. These aren't just single factories, they're innovation hubs supported by regional governments, global health organizations, and private investors.
Right? Like the World Health Organization's mRNA vaccine technology transfer hub in South Africa. That initiative brought together multiple partners to create a platform for local vaccine manufacturing, not just for COVID, but for future public health threats. It's a powerful example of resilience through decentralization.
And beyond vaccines, we're seeing new facilities focused on biosimilars and monoclonal antibodies, therapies that were once out of reach for low and middle income countries. That kind of expansion has huge implications for global access and economic development.
But of course, with opportunity comes complexity. Building these ecosystems requires strong regulatory capacity, skilled labor, and stable supply networks. You can't just build a plant and call it resilience. You need the infrastructure and governance to sustain it.
That's where international collaboration really matters. Organizations like the International Coalition of Medicines Regulatory Authorities, ICMRA, are working to align global regulatory standards so countries can share data and reduce duplication. It's slow progress, but it's happening.
And you can feel that momentum. 10 years ago, biomanufacturing resilience would have been a niche topic. Today, it's a boardroom conversation. Executives are asking, how resilient are we and how do we prove it? Because investors, regulators, and even consumers are watching.
Exactly. ESG reporting is pushing companies to measure more than just financial performance. Now they're tracking supply continuity, sustainability metrics, and operational risk exposure as indicators of long-term value. Biomanufacturing resilience isn't just a technical strength, it's a business differentiator.
That's an important point. The companies that demonstrate resilience through data, those that can show redundancy, transparency, and compliance, are the ones earning investor confidence. It's becoming a form of brand equity.
And in many cases, those same companies are finding financial advantages too. Insurers and lenders are starting to offer better rates or credit terms for manufacturers that can prove risk mitigation and continuity planning. It's similar to how ESG performance influences capital markets. It's risk-based economics.
That's fascinating because it ties resilience directly to competitiveness. What used to be an internal operations discussion has become part of strategic positioning. And that's not limited to big players. Smaller biotech firms, startups, and CDMOs are using resilience as a selling point when pitching partnerships or investors.
Exactly. Where reliable has become a differentiator. If you can guarantee consistent supply, faster tech transfer, and transparent compliance reporting, you're a more attractive partner, especially for companies in critical therapies like oncology, rare disease, or vaccines.
Another piece of this conversation that doesn't get enough attention is innovation in materials and equipment. The supply chain for single use technologies, tubing, filters, bags was one of the hardest hit during COVID. Now, manufacturers are exploring alternative materials and reusable systems that maintain sterility without creating massive waste.
And suppliers are starting to think about circular economies, recycling programs for single-use plastics, energy-efficient sterilization, even carbon-neutral shipping logistics. It's all part of resilience through sustainability.
Exactly, because resilience isn't just about bouncing back. It's about building systems that don't break down in the first place. If we can make biomanufacturing more sustainable, more digital, and more distributed, we're not just solving today's problems, we're future proofing the industry.
And it feels like we're at that inflection point now. Biomanufacturing is no longer just a back-end function. It's becoming a strategic pillar of national health security, corporate sustainability, and scientific innovation.
That's the big takeaway. Um, the disruptions of the past few years were painful, but they forced transformation. The companies that learned from them are stronger, smarter, and better prepared for whatever comes next.
If there's one thing that's become clear throughout this conversation, it's that resilience isn't an afterthought anymore. It's the backbone of modern biomanufacturing. The lessons learned over the past few years have reshaped how the life sciences industry approaches everything from supplier relationships to digital infrastructure.
We've seen that true resilience is built at the intersection of technology, strategy, and people. It's the ability to anticipate disruption before it happens, to adapt systems in real time, and to empower teams to make informed decisions when the unexpected occurs.
And what's really exciting is how resilience is now driving innovation, not just responding to crisis. The same tools that improve continuity, digital twins, AI-based analytics, modular facilities, are also unlocking new levels of efficiency and speed. We're talking about a world where production cycles are shorter, quality data is instantaneous, and products reach patients faster than ever before.
But with that progress comes responsibility. Regulators, investors, and the public are all demanding transparency. Companies can't just claim resilience, they have to prove it. That means integrating data integrity, cybersecurity, sustainability, and ethical sourcing into every step of the supply chain. Resilience is as much about trust as it is about technology.
And that's where organizations like EMA International come in, helping life sciences companies align operational strength with regulatory confidence. Because at the end of the day, the goal isn't just to survive disruptions, it's to build systems that thrive through them.
The next decade of biomanufacturing will be defined by those who balance agility with accountability, those who invest in digital maturity, sustainable design, and cross border collaboration will set the new standard for how global health infrastructure operates.
And if the past few years have taught us anything, it's that resilience pays off, not just in risk mitigation, but in innovation, competitiveness, and patient impact.
If you'd like to learn more about how EMA International supports biomanufacturers in strengthening operations, compliance, and long term growth, visit www.emmainternational.com or reach out at info@emmainternational.com.
And as always, thank you for joining us on the deep dive.
Stay informed, stay resilient, and stay innovative.